Morning Date. Time for yet another edition of Morning Date, a segment where I get to sit and chat with outstanding figures from all fields and all walks of life. And today, what a treat for myself and what a treat for our listeners. I sit down with Mr. Peter Bint, former EBS radio personality and currently a reporter for NHK. We're going to talk about the historic match between Isidol and the artificial intelligence, the computer Alphago. We're going to talk about that and much more, as a matter of fact. Peter, how you doing?
Good morning, Steve. I'm doing well.
Long time no see.
Yeah, and I never thought I'd have a date with you, let alone a morning date.
Yeah.
Not something on my bucket list.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But it's great to be here.
When was the last time you were on EBS radio?
I was briefly in Korea last year, and I was on English Go-Go for a little while. But the last time I was on Morning Special was as a news guy. I started as you just finished hosting it with Nemo, actually.
Okay.
That was about 5 years ago.
Goodness.
And you're back here.
I'm back now, and now you're back here as well.
Exactly. Things go in circles.
Well, we're short on time, so let's get straight into it. Tell us about how you came to be at that press conference before we talk about your question.
Sure. Well, I used to be an NHK World reporter, the Seoul reporter. That's their English 24-hour news channel, which is like CNN. So I was helping an NHK documentary team who are filming not so much the Go side of things, the Go game, but the artificial intelligence side, and looking at how that's going to have further implications, not just obviously for beating a human at Go. That's all well and good, but they've got many more uses that they want to put into practice.
So can you give us a summary of the matches? Because you were there for the entirety, right?
Yes. So it was a brilliant series. I was there. The first day was the press conference. They had a gala dinner. We were lucky enough to attend that where no other journalists were allowed. And I got to ask, he said, his prediction a couple of weeks before the game was 5-0. He'd easily beat this machine.
Oh, really?
And then he saw the presentation on that press day, and he saw all these complicated algorithms, and he was like, oh, okay, this could be more difficult than I thought.
So Isidol was shown how this computer was put together to play Badu.
Yeah, because it does all this self-learning. So he was basing it on the October version where it beat a European champion 5-0.
Okay.
And he thought, no, I can still beat that computer program because there's a big difference between the European paddock Go players and Korean and Chinese and Japanese. They're on a much higher level.
Okay.
And then he saw these algorithms and he'd realized from October it had been playing like hundreds of thousands of games against itself and learning, improving all the time. So he was a little less sure, but still quite confident. He said, maybe 4-1 then. And then that first game, you saw Alphago take some really strange moves which are not traditionally acceptable. Teachers would definitely punish their students if they made these moves. But in the long run, they turned out to be absolutely genius moves that had a much more long game in mind. And it just completely shocked him, the commentators. Everyone was thinking, oh, he's winning. And then towards the end, they're like, oh, my goodness, he's lost by quite a lot.
Well, it is the kind of game, though, isn't it, where it's hard to tell in the beginning or even partway through the match who has the real advantage.
Absolutely.
But when AlphaGo was making those quote-unquote mistakes, all the humans around and the commentators, they thought this computer's not as smart as everyone thought.
Exactly. And they were made to eat those words because at the end of the game, it was like, no, those moves had this bigger picture. And the thing was, every time they thought AlphaGo had a weakness, in the second game, it looked like it couldn't quite finish off the game very well. Then in the third game, it would do that superbly well. And then when it came to the fourth game, everyone was thinking, okay, it's going to be a whitewash, 5-0 to AlphaGo. Made some really terrible mistakes in the fourth game, but people were still then saying, oh no, but first, second, and third games, it made moves that looked like mistakes, but it won comprehensively. It's going to do it again. And then when Isidol actually won the game and AlphaGo resigned, he couldn't believe it. I don't think the commentators, they were like, oh, so it does have a chink in its armor, It's not perfect.
I was told that part of the strategy for Isidol in that match that he won was just matching moves that AlphaGo was making.
At the beginning of the game, that's how it played out. And it also mirrored exactly like the first 8 or 9 moves, the second game. So he wanted to kind of test if AlphaGo would just do the exact same patterns if he did the same counter moves. But it was actually him who first did a different move to the second game. And I spoke to the guys at AlphaGo about that, and they said even if Lee had played the exact same moves as the second game, AlphaGo would not mirror image exactly the same. It always has some random elements to its moves.
So after watching this, and especially after seeing that strategical move by AlphaGo of seemingly making mistakes, but looking to the long term for a better result. That's what inspired your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the NHK team that we were working with, they're doing the documentary on AI, and their long-term goal is to use this in all fields, like global warming, to solve those kind of issues in medical practices. It's actually being used at the moment to diagnose some kind of eye diseases, and it's better than doctors by about 8 or 9% in its diagnosis, because
Okay.
it sees millions of images fed into the system, and it will say this person has this disease, where a doctor might not spot that, but it's right, you know. But there are going to be times when it makes these mistakes.
Well, when you asked that question, what kind of context were you thinking of? Were you thinking medically? Were you thinking other industries?
Yeah, medically, and anything where people's lives are on the line. You know, if we have AI systems in place and they say to do something that goes against all human intuition, but we understand, we recognize that they are perhaps cleverer than us, or more intelligent than us. And we accept that, but it comes out with a bad result at the end. You know, what kind of ethical issues are at the heart of this? I think it's going to be really difficult.
Let's listen to that audio clip from the press conference once again.
Today there was that sequence of 3 to 4 AlphaGo moves which looked like an unfathomable mistake to even the experts, but they couldn't dismiss it because mistakes have previously turned out to be advantageous. If this happens in real-world usage, something medical where someone's life depends on it, and even to experts it looks like a grave error, but people accept it thinking there's a bigger picture in mind, it would cause a lot of confusion. What do you think about that?
In the world. Lisa Doll is one of those. So that's one thing I would say. Of course, also we're playing a game, a beautiful game, but healthcare would be a different matter, and that would require obviously extensive, stringent testing in the normal way for software. And but that's not. This is a one-off program that's you know, in the prototype phase and work in progress phase that we are testing here. So I think that's very different.
So basically, his answer was, I don't know. That was a very long way of saying, I don't know, man.
He was taken aback. That was Mr. Hassabis, who is the founder of Deepmine, that came up with this program. And yeah, I don't think he was expecting that at a Baduk game at the end of the Go game when they just lost. I think he wasn't feeling too great either. But I did speak to him the next day, and we tackled that question again in a one-on-one interview, and he was much more forthcoming with some answers. He'd had some time to think about it. The programs that are in AlphaGo will be the same similar kind of algorithms that are used in artificial intelligence for other programs like medical and healthcare. And he said the point here is that these are going to be super assistants to humans. They're not going to be the decision makers, these computers. So they'll just come out with lots of different options, and in the real world situation they'll give reasonings for it. In AlphaGo you never saw the reasons for any of the moves.
Okay, right.
So they come up with those options, and then humans could then choose that, because they can filter through so much more information than humans, right?
And it seems like at that point he had some time to process your question and come up with a better answer. But that seems like a step in the right direction, where AI can give human beings a list of, you know, maybe, I don't know, 20 options or 50 options, and then human beings can make their own decision based upon that human instinct that we trust.
Yeah, and their own experience, you know, and the compassionate side of things, you know, when lives are at risk. If there was a choice between so many children's lives and adult lives or something like that, then that needs human compassion. And he's at the forefront of ethics for artificial intelligence as well, and kind of developing a code. And I think that's going to be really vital when you're developing these systems, that you have that ethics in place as well.
Was it fascinating to watch the matches?
Absolutely. I'm not a Baduk expert or a Go expert by any means. I looked up the rules before I went, and I thought, this is quite simple.
Yeah.
One white, one black, easy peasy.
Yeah.
And then when you're watching it, it's so complex, more different permutations than atoms in the whole universe. It's crazy. That's why the computer can't do like chess and work out every move. It has to use some intuition, and that's what they're building into these systems. But seeing Isedo actually beat the system, that was the highlight.
It's
for
pretty
me.
impressive, isn't it?
Unbelievable.
All right, so we're going to talk about what you're currently working on with EBS. But first, let's check out some messages for you from our listeners. Shin Dong-soo Nim says, wow, Peter, long time no see. Great to see you again.
Wow. Well, I can't see your face, but great to hear from you again. Let me read. I haven't read a message for years.
Oh, go read them all, yeah.
최고은님, 와, 피터 오랜만이에요. 환영해요. Oh, thank you. It's really great to be back in this seat. Carol Kim, 피터 선생님, 너무 반가워요. Me too. 너무 반가워요. Thank you for the messages.
Keep going.
Okay, 8958님, 피터 반가워요. Alphago 때문에 다시 만나네요. Yes, it's all thanks to Alphago.
Alphago has brought you back
It's
together.
brought me into the limelight. Thank you very much. And 6692, Peter, I thought you went back to the UK. How have you been doing? I'm happy to hear your voice again. I am still living in London, but fingers crossed I'll be here more often in the future.
Okay, and one last one, 최란희님.
EBS2 왕초보 영어에서 봤어요. 모닝 스페셜에서 더 잘생겨 보이세요. Oh, better looking on morning special than on the TV. Yeah, it must be this camera. Thank you, PD.
Yeah, take those cameras wherever you
absolutely.
go, right? So you're working on an EBS parenting program called Yuga Hajji.
Yes, yeah, that's one project that I'm doing. That's it's very different. It's not on TV. They're trying to expand the social media side, like things on YouTube and things like that. So it's this series where many different parents, some celebrity parents, Joyce Beck, who's living in Canada for a while, we just show how we raise our kids in different countries or different environments, try and give tips to other parents. I think that's crucial. Like anyone can do this, not just me because I've been on EBS, but any parent who has like a shortcut, a life hack when they're parenting and can share that with other people. So normal people can upload their videos as well. And it's just a great resource for parents who are maybe pulling out their hair thinking, what do I do to the kids this weekend or something like that.
That's a fantastic idea. And of course, you're not a brand new parent, but a relatively new parent. So
Yes.
this is very useful for you as well, I would
Sure,
think.
absolutely. And as I'm doing this, I'm trying to think of ways that I can better teach my kids or educate my kids and what I should do for the next episode. So it helps me to think of new ideas as well. And I don't know, when you're in England, it's very different, the education environment to Korea. You know, there's less pressure on kids to do more formal learning. And it's much more about just having fun, you know, going to galleries or museums, but not having to read all the things, just looking at what you want to look at.
Yeah.
It's giving them much more choice. And I think that's a good thing.
What a wonderful program to be working on, right? Well, Peter, thank you so much. And you mentioned just a moment ago, perhaps, fingers crossed, you'll be back here on a more regular basis.
I hope so. Not in Kaylin's seat, but yes, I hope to be back in Korea and maybe back on EBS somewhere if they'll have me.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Peter, Ben, thank you so much for coming and talking to us this morning on Morning Special.